Justice, where are you? Michael and Linda are here.
Love you, Linda.
The world is justice. Will we ever find justice?
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing
Will
"Oh
we
Happy
know
Day."
justice when we see it? To be and Damila lead the way, hoping justice will win the day. It's Nary Clues, finding justice where we can. Join us now, we're on the run. Justice is waiting, we'll see it done.
Oh, hey, thanks for dropping by. That's just water. Come on. Michael Bryant here, Justice Served TV. Good to have you along. We have a very special show tonight. I'm sure you've been aware from the news that Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing Bryant Thompson, the UHC, United Healthcare CEO, has been in court last week, good chunk of this week, probably a few more days, all about suppressing evidence that was gathered during the investigation and primarily his arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania. So to help us understand all of this, I'm very happy to bring along here Sarena Townsend. She's with Townsend Law Group. Isn't that amazing that she works for a firm that actually is the same as her last name? What are the odds of that happening? Anyway, we always enjoyed having her on, and her husband Paul on Law and Crime back in the day. I was only there for 7 years, and my sentence was commuted. And now I'm here. Anyway, lovely person and pretty attractive too.
Typical man.
So let's bring on Miss Townsend. There she is. Hello there. How are you?
That was amazing entree. Like, that was fabulous. Nice to see you, Michael.
Good to see you. So, Luigi Mangione, the heartthrob of alleged murderers. Let me start with that, because when I've told folks I'm going to go down there tomorrow and kind of, get a sense of the room and, some of the color. But I really want to talk to people on the street who are infatuated with this guy. Give me your take on that.
Well, Michael, I mean, we do have like a green theme going on today. So the infatuation is catching, right?
I appreciate that you painted your wall to match our color
I'm telling
scheme.
you,
Yeah.
I knew it. I was out here with the roller, just painting real quick. It's still wet,
That is dedication. I appreciate it.
Totally. Yeah, my impression is, his fan base and his supporters are still there with him. This has been going on. I think we just hit the 1-year anniversary of his arrest, and it doesn't seem to have waned the interest in the outcome of this case. So people are really, really supporting. There were lines, to get into the courtroom. People were holding seats or positions in the line, and I think selling them as if it was a concert ticket. So big support.
So, okay, assuming he is attractive, I know that's an issue. But there's also this undercurrent that what he did was somehow justified because the healthcare system screws everybody. So too bad. Give me your thoughts on that.
I mean, murder is never the answer, right? Like, of course it's alleged, but if this is what he did and why he did it, there are other ways to seek justice. And we appreciate, obviously, people who are in this system. I was a prosecutor. I'm a defense attorney. I've seen every angle of this, including working at Rikers Island. So all angles. And I know the frustration that people feel in their lives when things happen, when bad things happen. And we see street justice happening too. It's just not the answer. There are ways to handle things in a civilized society, and this is not it.
You went right by the Rikers Island thing. I didn't know you worked there. What was you doing? Was that door to door Avon sales? What was going on there?
Yeah, just checking locks, stuff like that.
Just selling moisturizer. Yeah. I mean,
totally. No.
Were you a CO? What were you doing there?
No, I was in charge of internal affairs. I was the deputy commissioner. Yes, and it was my job to investigate misconduct by staff and to discipline the staff for that misconduct.
Wow, that sounds like a full-time job and more.
It was.
How long did you work there doing that?
I did that a little over 5.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
You got to be bruised. And I just mean emotionally, and the stress had to be incredible.
It was, I was a prosecutor for 10 years before that. So I had a long career of, I guess, secondhand trauma by helping victims throughout that time. And then, of course, I went to Rikers Island, and it's similar, but it's almost the other side of the coin in helping people and making sure that their constitutional rights are not violated while they're behind bars awaiting their trials. And you just get, you bring stuff home with you. As you mentioned, my husband, Paul, he's in this work as well. He's a criminal defense attorney. So, our dinner time conversations,
I
you
hope
know,
they're on everything but that.
it's hard to leave it
I
at the
know.
door. It's
Yeah.
hard. These are our lives, and we really dedicate our life to this work. So, yeah, you do see a lot of it. But at the same time, even if you're a defense attorney, you still know, right from wrong is right from wrong. And so definitely don't condone murder.
Is Rikers as bad as its reputation?
It is. Unfortunately, I would say that it gets a bad rap in that not everybody is that bad. Both detainees and staff get totally bad raps. And when you work there, you realize that people are people no matter where they are in life, whether it's their career or, they've done something maybe they regret doing. And we can't judge people like that, just flat out. Everybody is a person who's either working there or detained there. So I think it gets a bad rap fairly because things are really bad behind the bars there across that bridge. It is not good. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to say that everybody there is bad and that nobody there has the right intentions. I think that there's mismanagement. I think that it's a difficult population to oversee. So you're dealing with very, very stressful, difficult situations, and it's impossible for it to be perfect. But it's far from perfect,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And Mangione's not there, is he?
Correct. He's not there. He is in MDC.
Yeah.
So because he's facing both federal and state charges, they're actually holding him in a federal jail rather than Rikers Island, which holds people facing only state charges.
Which that's the Epstein suite.
Ah,
Is he- Yeah.
yes. Yeah. Yeah, he must be right in Epstein's suite or Diddy's suite. Diddy was
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that, compared to Rikers is kind of cush, right?
You know what? Comparatively speaking, it is. It's certainly not great, but Rikers is, its reputation is what it is because it really is probably the worst place you could
Yeah.
imagine being.
Yeah, we talked, in Fulton County a lot. We heard from our friend Fonnie Willis there briefly. Fulton County, Rice Street is compared quite often to Rikers.
Hmm.
I don't have the experience to know if they're really exaggerating or they're legit, but I hear it's bad. And to me, it's not everybody that's in there, but those that are in there that don't want trouble, that those are the most vulnerable, right?
Totally. Yes. And I have clients just like that, who have been assaulted and attacked by other detainees. You have to understand that, the gang violence that happens on our streets in New York City, it doesn't stop at Rikers. And so you do have gangs running Rikers Island in many different ways. They're able to move contraband from the street onto the island. They move it through visitors. They even move it through staff. And it does happen. And so you even have people who some individuals, not everybody, and certainly not even most, but the few that are very dangerous on Rikers Island, sometimes they even want to stay there rather than go upstate because they have their connections, and they're people that can move money and contraband for them while they're there. And it's horrible. It's really horrible because you do have people who are locked up there, facing charges that may be overcharged, and maybe they shouldn't be at Rikers Island, and they are terrified. And you have to learn very fast how to protect yourself at Rikers Island.
Oh man, did you ever feel threatened, unsafe when you were there?
I didn't. It's interesting because all of the previous deputy commissioners before me used to carry. They used to have a gun,
Oh.
and I didn't. That's just not my thing, and I'm terrified that it's just not a good thing for me to have. It's just not.
Hmm.
And so, but my staff and the people who were there to help me, who would take me around or drive me or whatever, they'd be like, Sarena, you really have to start to carry. And I was like, I'm not doing that. But to be honest with you, it's not just, like I said, it's really not just detainees. There were people were more upset with the people who were more upset with me as the head of internal affairs were actually staff and the unions, not the detainees. So, it is kind of a scary situation though, because you do have staff who do carry.
Oh man. Okay. One quick question. This is unfair because I didn't prepare you for this, but
It's
I'm
okay.
intrigued by this whole Rikers thing.
Yeah.
Any one story you can share? Redact the names but just a scenario that you dealt with that made an impression on you.
Yes. And you're right, you didn't prep me for it, but here I am. I already got the
You
story
must.
on the tip
You
of my
got one.
tongue.
Yeah.
So this is the story of Rebecca Hillman. She was a captain at Rikers Island, and there was a detainee who had been threatening suicide, and he was not doing well mentally. And she was touring, and she saw that he had, he was saying, "I'm going to hang myself. I'm going to hang myself." She did nothing really to help him, and he actually did hang himself in front of her. And her correction officer, her subordinate who was there, started to take out what's called a 911 knife. It's the knife that they use to cut people down in case of these issues. And she said to him, "Don't cut him down. He's just faking." Okay. He was not faking. He actually died. She was So for me, I investigated that case because it was misconduct on her part and potentially misconduct on the CO's part, although I don't think we ended up charging him internally. I had wanted to suspend her for the duration of her criminal investigation and prosecution because she ended up being criminally prosecuted for this. And so I suspended her for 28 days. And I wanted to suspend her for the duration, but because of like a handshake deal with the unions, I wasn't allowed to suspend her for more. So that was a frustrating thing for me, just policy wise at Rikers, because due to this handshake deal that happened God knows how long ago, you had this woman who was charged criminally with criminally negligent homicide, who was still collecting a paycheck. Yes, she was modified. She wasn't dealing, we took her away from inmate contact, but she was still technically, after those 28 days, working, making money from the city. And it was crazy. She ended up getting, like I said, prosecuted, convicted. She did take the stand at her own trial. The jury obviously did not believe that she did everything right. They believed that she, should be charged, and they did convict her. And I believe she got a 6-month sentence, which is a little light for
That's
that.
pretty light. Yeah. Was that some sort of lesser included from the criminally negligent homicide?
That's a good question. I actually think she was convicted of the criminally negligent homicide, and she still only got 6 months. I mean, I'm sure her lawyer is a good lawyer. I think it was Todd Spodek, maybe. I think was her lawyer. And he's a very good lawyer, and he probably made a lot of mitigating, arguments on her behalf. But still, there is somebody who's literally dead because of her lack of attention, because of her negligence. So very light sentence, in my opinion.
That's such a scary, on a psychological level, that's just scary that she was so, and I'm sure he used this in her defense, that she was so, beat upon by the process and by being in there day after day after day and seeing so many things that to her, it was not unreasonable to just go, that's fake.
Yes. And she was so convinced of that she took the stand. And she told that to the jury. She said, "I really thought he was faking." And the jury did not credit that at all. But you're right. Like, she must have had such a conviction of that she took the stand to say those things.
Yeah. The problem was that, even if you think somebody is faking, what's the harm of cutting them loose?
Right.
You got me.
Right. So that she put her ego above his life, So that story has always stuck with me.
Well, yeah, great story. Unfortunately, that it is so forefront of your brain. Okay, let's talk about Mr. Luigi Mangione. Let's go ahead and give us the thumbnail of why we're in court, why we have been, and then we'll get into some of the details.
Yeah. So anytime you're criminally prosecuted and a DA has taken something from you that they now want to use at your trial against you, there is a pretrial suppression hearing for that. Now, typically, there's 3 things that they could take that are involved in a pretrial suppression hearing. Number 1 is any property that was taken from your person. So in Luigi's case, we're talking about a backpack filled with things that was taken, maybe not from his person, but near his person. And so he would, he has standing to contest that recovery. So property, any identifications that are made. So in this case, there was an identification made via surveillance video of him. So they want to be able to introduce that identification at trial. And then lastly, statements, any incriminating statements that a person might make. There has to be an assessment of how the police got those statements from a person to make sure that it was done correctly and constitutionally before a judge will allow those statements to be used against somebody at their trial.
And we've heard, we'll get into some detail, but there have been a lot of witnesses and a lot of evidence that is proposed, as you suggested, some body cam stuff. I have something here I want to listen to. I don't know that I'd heard this before I started kind of looking into doing our thing here, and that's the 911 call.
Yeah.
Was that introduced during this process?
Correct. Yes. I don't think anybody heard it until the hearings started.
Okay. Well, let's hear it. Let me see if I can get this fired off here.
Okay.
What is the address of your emergency?
You can hear that, right?
Yep.
It's not really an emergency. I'm a manager at Plank Road McDonald's out here on the Boulevard. Okay. And I have a customer here that some other customers were suspicious of, that he looked like the CEO shooter from New York. Okay. So they're just really upset, and they're like coming to me, and I was like, well, I can't approach him, No, of course not. All right, honey, what's your name?
It's a long name.
Yeah. I remember there's a long pause here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this individual still there? Yes, he's still in the back of our lobby by the bathroom. Okay. And I believe he's wearing, let me run back to my security camera. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm trying to sit out and do like individual calm days with my managers, and like 6 customers walk up to me, and I was like, okay guys, I can't really do anything. But he's wearing a black sweater jacket with a medical mask and a tan khaki colored like beanie. Okay. You said a black jacket? A tan beanie. Okay. And like the blue medical mask. Okay.
Now, for the people know that I was a McDonald's manager, so I immediately spot the looks like the hash brown potatoes that he's eating. That is one food item I cannot stand behind. I'm sorry. I like my McDonald's stuff. It's basically a sponge for grease. That's what it is. So I can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a conviction right there, right?
Yes, it could be a felony. I'm not sure. In Altoona.
This is the one that they thought that shot the police officer? Or shot the CEO. He shot the CEO. Okay, I got you. Yeah. I got you. White male? Yeah. Well, he has his beanie pulled down, so the only thing you can see is his eyebrows, because I tried to Google it to try to calm them down a little bit. And I'm like, guys, it's kind of hard to tell with his eyes and his eyebrows. I was like, I don't know what to do here, guys. No, you're fine. You're fine. And then I tried to call the non-emergency number and just kept ringing. So I was like, yeah, they don't always answer that. If they're on another line, they won't answer it. How about like height and weight and stuff? Is he taller? Sitting down. Okay. So when I was trying to like look into it, he's kind of like mid-height. And my registered lady, when I was like trying to be non-discreet about it, she's like frantic, and she's an older lady, and she's like, I just don't feel comfortable. Oh my heavens! I was like, I hope she's wrong, but it does happen, sadly enough. All right. How about weight? Does he look like he's heavy, thin? He's wearing a big, thick hoodie. So So he kind of just looks like mid-weight. Okay. But like with the hoodie on, it makes him look heavier because it's obviously cold.
Okay. Does he have a vehicle description, honey?
I don't know.
Okay, that's okay.
I'm sitting in the opposite corner of my lobby trying to sit down with my managers to have like one-on-one time with them.
Yes.
And everybody's just like running up to me. And I'm like, okay, guys. But it looks like he has either a CVS or a Walgreens bag in front of him. Yes. I'll make all the bagels. Taking 4 bagels. One of them's no butter.
She's like in the middle. I mean, I'm like, I had a flashback there. Could I get 12 ham, 2 no onion?
Oh my God.
Let's go.
All right, honey. I do have an officer on the way for you. Just keep an eye on him. If he leaves, just give us a call back and let us know, okay?
Alrighty, will do.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a great
Bye.
day. Okay. Yeah, the New York Post. Thank you for doing that. What's your, first of all, it was an odd 911 call. It just seemed very casual, very, let's just look into this because, sometimes people get it right, but it was almost like there's not a chance in hell this is the guy.
Yeah, she almost was like, look, I have to make this call because everybody's annoying me, but I don't know. I don't want to waste your time. I tried calling the non-emergency number. I'm taking bagel orders over here. Like, it is the most casual 911 call I've ever heard, especially in a homicide case.
Yeah, and you can imagine it was more than 5 minutes. And so obviously he's very comfortable. He has no clue that anybody might have identified his eyebrows, which apparently were the primary feature, because that's all you can see with the mask here and the hat here.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the ID and where you think that might go at the time of trial.
It's a really good question. I think, and a lot of people have been bringing this up, the ID, and he did cover his face throughout. Whoever it was, if it's not Luigi, the shooter did have face covering and was bundled up, and it is difficult to make that identification. Now, we all know that distinctive features help in making an identification, and so the eyebrows are pretty distinctive. And interestingly enough, it did. From what we heard at the hearings this past week, he had like a handwritten note of, I guess, his plan of what he was going to do. And part of his plan was to pluck his eyebrows. So it's kind of like even he knew that he had distinctive looking eyebrows.
That's an interesting consciousness of guilt.
Yes. Yes. I mean, there's a lot in that paper about like changing his sneakers, because he even wrote in there that like the white stripe at the bottom of his sneakers were too distinctive. I found that was very interesting that he wrote so much down, because in a way he's trying everything not to be identified and to, make sure that he gets away with everything. And he's thinking of every single possibility, like when to travel, how to travel. He apparently had like the bag that he had was like covered with like the metal inside so that it couldn't be tracked. He thought of all of it, but then he wrote it all down, so it's like.
And is that all in the manifesto or whatever that was found in the backpack, or is it elsewhere?
I believe it was in the backpack. Wow. And I think he had not only, maybe it wasn't just the manifesto, but also like free notes that he had written.
I think they found a piece of crumpled up paper in one of his pockets or something.
Yes.
Yeah. And all of that's being thought about this week and last. Are you surprised how long it's been taking so far?
So in a way I am, but I am not. I am surprised because I've done hundreds of suppression hearings myself, and maybe not hundreds, but maybe 100. And they're usually a day, maybe two. They are very, quick typically because this isn't a trial. It's really just about the process, the procedure that the police took. Um, However, I guess I'm not surprised here because it does feel like since this case has garnered so much attention and everybody is talking about it, that everybody wants to just do everything extra. The prosecutors are calling witnesses that, frankly, if this case was not high profile, I don't think they would call. It's chain of custody type of witnesses that are really unnecessary, especially because there are lax rules about hearsay at these hearings. And so most of the officers could really testify as to most of this activity without having to call every single one.
So do you think that's because the prosecution is concerned that the defense might, leap at any opportunity? If there's a little crack, they're going to exploit it?
I do think so. Although I will also say that it's not surprising that they have some extra people on there more than usual because of the fact that he traveled to Altoona. So now, because you have to have, people, officers from Altoona testify and officers from the NYPD testify. So, naturally there are going to be more witnesses anyway.
Okay, so let's talk about Altoona, the favorite of many people to go to McDonald's.
Sure.
Just yesterday, there was, I guess it was an announcement. I don't know if it was in court or after court, that there were a couple of statements that were made on video that the prosecution agreed that they were not going to use because of the two-party rule in Pennsylvania. Now, for
Yeah.
those who don't understand, when I was working at Extra, that hard-hitting news magazine, do undercover stuff, and we couldn't do it in California because it's a two-party state. We would come to New York or Nevada, both single-party states, which means you only need one person's permission to record. Well, if I'm the one recording, I give myself permission to record. It seems bizarre, right? I mean,
It does.
but that's the one-party rule, and there are many states that are still one-party. Pennsylvania is not one of them. Connecticut is not one of them. You have to have the permission of the person being recorded. Well, I thought it was odd because this was body cam footage, as I understand it, right?
Yes.
You would have to then approach that person and advise them, I'm recording this, and then they would either say, "Don't you do that," or
Yeah.
something that suggests they acquiesce to it. What happened here exactly?
I find that it's very weird too, because I feel like in, policing is even people who want oversight of police. They want them to be able to use their body worn cameras so that they could see what's going on. And it just feels very strange that a police officer would have to announce that and also get somebody's permission. And it is a little bit foreign to me because I practice in New York, and in New York is a one party state. So this is never something that comes up in New York or in my practice. So it is very odd that they had to not, that they're not able to use this footage simply because Pennsylvania is a two-party state. I would think, like, if you're a private citizen, or you're even an officer who's surreptitiously recording somebody, that feels a little bit different than like a body-worn camera being turned on. So I don't know, but I guess they're taking it seriously. So it's
Yeah,
out.
I mean, to officially just say you're right, because that's, I mean, it's a hard and fast rule. And
Mhm.
my own experience with Massachusetts, and I haven't looked, but they must also be a two-party state. I was pulled over by the patrolman there, the stateies, on the way to Plymouth to cover a Karen Reed hearing.
Hmm.
And the vehicle, I call it the mobile studio, is new, and so it had no plates. There was a screw up at the dealership. I bought it in New York, but I'm in Connecticut, so there was this weird problem.
Mhm.
So I'm going into like a third month with no plates, and all it has on the back is that paper,
Yeah, the
and
temporary.
it's behind a tinted window of
Oh
this
no,
vehicle.
my God.
So the officer couldn't see that either. So you
Yeah.
can tell, he gets in behind me, and
Yep.
and I'm thinking, well, I know I'm not speeding.
Mhm.
Maybe he's just doesn't like people driving cars that came from New York. I don't know. Pulls me over. First thing he says is, "I'm recording this on body cam."
Mm.
As he walked up to the side of the vehicle, first thing he told me.
Yeah. That is interesting because I think probably in their policy, in the actual police policy, they have to announce that. I don't do a lot of work outside of New York, but I did do a case in New Jersey. And in that case, yes, according to their patrol guide, they also had to announce that they were recording when they started recording. So,
Interesting. So
yeah.
it's funny, it wasn't like he was asking for my permission, though. He was just
Right.
telling me. Now,
Yeah.
I guess in theory, if I'd said, "Really, I'd rather you not," maybe he would have had to shut it down.
Yes, I think probably also, like, in their patrol guide, they have, those decision trees, basically,
Yeah.
like, if somebody says no, then you have to turn it off or explain why you can't turn it off, something like that. I
Yeah.
do think that's a thing. But it's interesting because, I think people who saw this decision just the other day about, the prosecution pulling those statements, they're celebrating, they're like, "Oh, Luigi's gonna
Big
walk,"
win, yeah,
Yeah,
mhm,
but
yeah.
from what I understand, first of all, people need to understand that, like, what that means is it's not like a judge already decided to suppress those statements. The prosecution has to give notice to the defense about any statements or property or identifications that they plan on using. That's how these suppression hearings typically get triggered. The prosecution gives notice, and in their notice, they have to specify what the statement was, when it was made, to whom it was made, where it was made, etc. And so presumably in this case, the prosecution gave like a nice long list of several different statements that he made and to different people. My understanding is the statements that were made at this point on that body worn camera were really not damning anyway. It sounded like he just kind of clammed up or didn't want to answer questions, but still the prosecution made notice of it, probably just to be thorough. And so basically they just pulled that notice. Like they pulled the statement and said, you know what? Forget it. We're not going to use that statement anyway. But I don't think it was really an incriminating statement.
So, and I've got the body cam that shows the cops going into the McDonald's, and there's a
Mhm.
brief conversation. I mean, they can still use the video, right? Or not?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, you could use that video for other things, right? Like to show what he looked like in order
Yeah.
to corroborate an identification. So yes.
Okay. Let's look at that just because now
Yeah.
in retrospect with what we think they've decided not to use, I guess we'll get a chance to see what they're missing.
Hmm.
And I think most people, this has been out there. The 911 call was kind of new to me, but this has been out there for a while.
Yeah.
But now knowing what we know and the fact that they did have discussion
Hmm.
in this suppression hearing, let's see if let me get that opened up here a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So I'll let this go ahead and roll. We can chat because it doesn't
Hmm.
go with audio until they get there.
Right.
So these guys are responding to that 911 call that we heard. We're sending a
Mhm.
unit on the way. Have a great day. And then, and then
I'm
the
sure it's
cop,
nothing.
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure they probably need a coffee.
Yeah.
So they head over there, and all they know is there's some guy that's been identified loosely by his eyebrows. He's in a
Right.
dark jacket. He's got this tan or camo colored knit cap on, kind of pulled down. See his eyebrows. From that, a number of people apparently identified him. And then they
Right.
told this, the manager became kind of the clearinghouse for these people that ID'd him. They call the cops. They go in. There are two of them, and they will now turn their audio on for us.
Mhm.
And now they will turn their audio on for us.
Action.
And there you go.
Yes, sir. There you go. Yeah, put your mask down real quick for me. Yeah, sure. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. What's your name?
Mark.
What is it?
Mark.
Mark?
Yes, sir.
Mark what?
Rosario.
Rosario? Someone called. They thought you were suspicious.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you have your ID on you?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Thanks. Thought she looked like someone guilty to. You know, run. 26, 27, 29 out of New Jersey. Romeo 6.
So that's the fake ID that he gave with that name, Mark Espinoza, on it. The ID is out there as well, but they blurred it here, obviously, because it had other identifying information on it. Did he say, maybe I should go back, did he say something like, you look suspicious, or people thought you were suspicious? And then did he say something like they thought you were, and he like referenced something specific?
I know it's very hard to hear what he referenced.
Yeah, let's listen to that again. So they come in, and the lead cop there, he's tricky. He goes, he pretends he's going to the bathroom.
He's going to the women's room.
And then he barely gets there, and he turns around. And I thought that the partner was a female, because I thought the hands looked very feminine.
Manicured, right?
But it's a guy.
Yes, sir. How you doing? Hey, put your mask down real quick for me? Yeah, sure. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay.
So he says thank you, and he starts to walk away like, you're good.
Yeah.
But this guy testified, this officer testified, right? And he said he knew right then, boom, this is the guy.
Right. The second he pulled the mask down, he's like, this is him. Yeah.
And so he pretends to wander off, and then it's like, oh, by the way.
What's your name?
Mark.
What is it?
Mark.
Mark? Yes, sir. Mark what?
Rosario.
Rosario? Someone called, they thought you were suspicious.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you have your ID on you? Yeah, yes, sir. Thanks. Thought she looked like someone guilty to.
So we thought you looked like somebody.
Right.
And
And then what? I don't even know what those words were. I have no idea what he said.
I don't either. It's almost like he was saying, guilty of something. He looked like something.
He was choking on some word over there.
Yes. Well, I'm sure, nothing against Altoona police, but probably not a normal encounter. Right?
No, probably. I mean, they are being highlighted on this case more than any case that has ever existed in Altoona.
Yeah. So I don't have there's other body cam footage that I think when they submitted it, it was more in the freeze frame. So you see, let's talk now about the backpack. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The backpack, which was a table away, once they identified who he was and they determined that he was lying about who he was, because he was not Mark, was it Espinoza? Rosario.
Yeah.
That was racist of me to just throw that name out there. Sorry. And so they decide, okay, let's just get that away from him. It was like next to him.
Yeah.
Now, so let's talk about that search. What's your take on whether or not they had the right to search that backpack?
I know a lot of people have opined about this. I think that if you add up the probable cause that kind of accumulated as they realized what was going on, I do think that they had the right to search. I think the bag was in his grabbable area. So that's
what everybody's been talking about, because it was behind the officer and a table away. But you could argue that he could react quickly and dart past the guy. And I mean, it's an argument.
It is. I mean, I think that there are arguments on the defense side as well. I'm not saying there aren't. I think you can make the argument that like there was enough distance, that there were, officers in between him and that bag. But at the same time, they already had probable cause to arrest him for the false ID, because they know that that's not actually his name.
And that's some sort of I think it's a felony in Pennsylvania.
Technically, yeah. I mean, it's such a stupid
all the kids
thing
in
to
college.
Be a felony. I know, and it's so dumb. It just allows you to like overcharge somebody, frankly, because that's a ridiculous thing to be a felony. But they do, they're basically saying that they're allowed to conduct a search incident to a lawful arrest of that bag. Once you're under arrest for basically anything under their protocol, they're saying that they could search. We have to keep in mind kind of the intangible piece of all of this, which is, in my opinion, this is such an important case. It's a homicide. As long as there's any legal way for a judge to find that all of this stuff is admissible, he's going to find a way. And so when I give my opinion, it's with that reference in my head. I've practiced in New York City courtrooms for 20 years. We're in a New York City courtroom. Like, in my experience, even though I know I've also been on the defense side and given, I think, pretty, creative arguments as to why evidence should be suppressed, supported by case law, etc. On very serious cases, judges typically do try to find a way to get those, incriminating statements and pieces of property in. So I do think that's going to play a role here too. It's not just the black and white law.
Yeah, and we've had that analysis before, most recently with the Bryant Walsh case up in Dedham there, where there were all of these searches done early on of devices subject to a consent and or search warrant, both of which the defense argued were exceeded.
Okay.
Yeah, and I felt too that the judge, who universally people love this judge, Judge Feneri, would find a way, whether it was some
Right.
sort of inevitable discovery analysis or something. And sure enough, it all came in. He was convicted just Monday. And I fully believe that'll be, issue number one on appeal.
Right.
And so for you guys, meaning defense making these arguments, that's where it's going if they don't win at this level.
That's right. You need to make the record, because if you're not going to win it at this level, you need to be able to preserve those objections for appeal later on down the road. But, the prosecution is going to say, look, he gave the false ID. That is, enough to arrest him. But it's not just that. It's the fact that once he pulled the mask down, now the guy saw and recognized him. And we can argue all day and night whether he should have felt that that was the person, on the surveillance shooting Brian Thompson. But as long as it's reasonable for him to think that, now the probable cause level is crazy. The decision to search the bag based off of this idea that this guy might have just committed a homicide rather than he just gave me a fake ID. There's so much more leeway to an officer in that state of mind, thinking that there could potentially be, a gun or something other dangerous object in that bag that they do not want Luigi to gain access to. So that's part of the calculation as well.
And this, these items in this bag, compared to any statements that they voluntarily said we're not going to use because of the two-party rule, they're huge. I mean, we're talking about the gun, the silencer, the manifesto. I'm not saying they can't convict him without that stuff, but that's the ball game in some ways. That makes their job, the prosecution's job, so much more difficult if that stuff doesn't come in. So to your point, good chance the judge is going to find a way to make that work. But if you are the defense, what is your argument?
So on the defense side, my argument would be that this was not in the grabbable area, that, this identification that he gave over was really nothing. It's a nothing burger, if you will, at McDonald's, right?
I saw that on the menu there. Yeah.
Right. And that they didn't have any reason to search that bag, that if this were anybody else, if they weren't heightened for an unreasonable reason, that this man could have been the shooter, that I would bring in cases to be like, hey, the last time you arrested somebody for giving you a fake ID, the last 10 times, the last 50 times, did you search their entire bag? Did you know what I mean? I think comparatively speaking, they definitely did things differently in this case than they would have any other, false ID case.
Yeah. And I'm not sure I don't like that, to be honest, that in most cases they have the discretion, with a college kid who's, I'm sure that's the scenario they run into 99 out of 100 times. College kid is just fudged on the birth date and they're going to buy liquor. So, but in this case, they actually could use it in a way that some might believe is an overreach and it shouldn't be allowed. But in this case, it may ultimately help convict a guy of murder.
Exactly. And that is the calculation that we're dealing with here. And that is the reality. That again, it's not just words on a page. It's not just black and white law. It's the totality of circumstances.
So in your learned opinion, what do you think is going to happen? Is it going to be, let's look the other way, this stuff's coming in, or is there really a legitimate reason to keep it out?
I think it's all going to come in. I think the statements that were made that they ended up pulling, I always felt we're not going to come in anyway, because even though it wasn't even, I didn't realize about the two-party state, actually. However, I do know that he said that he didn't want to answer questions. And if you continue to ask questions, once he says that, that without reading Miranda, that's a problem. So I actually thought that some statements were not going to come in anyway. And I still do think so. There might be more than just the statements that have been pulled. So I do think that there might be some statements that don't come in, but I do think that the property is going to come in. And I do think that identification is probably going to come in too.
Okay, so let's move to that next category, the statements, which are being attacked as being made while in custody. Therefore, Miranda attaches. Let's talk first of all about that scenario. He's sitting there at his table in the corner, so he's kind of cornered himself in a weird way, right? Yeah. He's cut off a couple of lines of escape, and now there are 3-4 cops in front of him. Is that in custody?
I would argue it is. I would. So there's a ton of case law that says that it's not about whether somebody's literally handcuffed and in a police precinct or in a police car. That custody is way broader than that. And this idea that, he wasn't in cuffs, it's not good enough. I think the fact that the cops were basically surrounding him, I think yesterday, one of the officers actually said on the stand that he was not free to leave. Luigi was not free to leave, which is one of the factors taken into consideration here. Not only whether Luigi thought he was free to leave or not, but whether he was actually free to leave.
Did he ask that question? Do you know if Luigi said, "Can I go"? Did he ever ask that?
I don't think he did.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think he did. And so, but it does check that box, the fact that the officer specifically said he would not have been free to leave.
And that would have helped the argument
Yeah.
if he had tried to leave or he had asked and they said, "No, you're not," and then still did not Mirandize him.
That's right.
As I remember my case law, help me, counselor, if I get this wrong, it's the subjective belief of the person. Do they reasonably believe they can leave?
That's exactly right.
Okay, so
yeah.
And I think that's person to person. I mean, really, if I were there and those guys were around me, if I didn't have consciousness of guilt, which I think will make your behavior very different, I would leave.
I know. It is. It does vary based on that. You're right. You're like, what do you like? I'm out of here. I finished my hash brown.
I'm feeling
leaving.
ill.
Yeah. Yeah, stop me if you want. But yeah, so you're absolutely right. It is about this subject's thought process, but it also has to be reasonable, But again, the fact that the cops admitted that he wasn't free to leave is kind of the driving force here at this point. It like trumps that.
So that's bad. I mean, for the prosecution,
it is.
That's bad.
Yes.
Bad.
It is.
So they acknowledge effectively that we should have Mirandized and we didn't. Oops. So we have this 20-minute gap before they did. And do we know much about what was specifically said in that 20 minutes?
I am not sure, to be honest with you. I don't know if maybe we did hear some at the hearing. I'm not positive. Maybe we did, and I just didn't catch it. But those statements are the statements that I'm referring to that I think are not going to be allowed in. And that's because the inquiry is about A, whether he was in custody, and B, whether he was interrogated.
Right.
That's right. That's the other piece of it. Did he make a spontaneous statement or was he actually questioned? And were the questions meant to elicit information that was that could imply criminality on his behalf? So I do think, so there's certain questions that can be asked even without Miranda that we like to call pedigree questions. Like, what is your name? Where do you live? Kind of identifying questions that don't go too deep. Michael, it is interesting though, in a case of false identification, technically, if I ask you what your name is, or I ask you again what your name is after you've given me a false name, it kind of feels like that is an incriminating, a question to elicit an incriminating answer. So that kind of that's an argument that I would make if I'm the defense. I'm like, yes, normally pedigree questions are A-okay because they're not meant to elicit incriminating answers. It's just your name and address. But here, where he's given a fake name, asking him his real name at that point, you're kind of asking him to admit to a crime.
Right. You're challenging him to that you've lied. Here's something I just thought about.
Yeah.
If the argument that the bag was searched incident to an arrest, wouldn't that support the need to give Miranda?
Totally. Yes. So it's self-contradictory. Yes.
I think we'd rather have the stuff in the bag. Right?
Exactly. Which I think, by the way, I bet that was part of the prosecution's prep with these witnesses. I bet they were like, look, things were not done perfectly well here. Now we need to figure out which direction is more important for us. And I think you're totally right. I think they have to eat, the statements, because that's not super incriminating, and they need whatever's in that bag.
Yeah. And even without the statements, if you just start with his deception on who he is, they have the license.
Yes.
They
Right.
know
They
who
can
he
prove
is.
that part.
So whether he says the name or not, it's on the license he provided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Now contrast that with another statement that they're trying to get into evidence, which I think will come into evidence because it was spontaneously made.
Okay.
And that is a statement that Luigi makes when he's already like shackled and cuffed, and he's being processed, or he's being transported, and he looks around and he says, without being questioned, spontaneously, something like, all this for a mass murderer? Wild. Okay. So that is, I mean, it's not necessarily incriminating because it's not an admission necessarily, but it's certainly not helping him,
No. No.
And it was made it seems to me like it was made spontaneously. It was
Yeah.
not in response to a question that was asked.
It's downright odd. But yeah, it
Yeah.
certainly doesn't help the guy. And he's also wrong on his definitions, unless he's,
Yeah.
mass murderer. I mean, it's sort of an aggrandizement, like he's like bigger than what he even did. That's bizarre.
Right. It almost leads the prosecution to explain the motive even more. Like it corroborates their analysis of what his motive was, right? Like if he considers, I think he was calling Bryant Thompson the mass murderer. I think that's what he meant.
Now that's interesting. I never thought of
I
that.
think that's what he meant.
Because I don't have pink hair and I'm not out in the street.
You know
that's
what?
a good point.
I
never
don't
thought of
know.
that.
We'll have to see. But I think that's what they're going with, that he was like, oh, all you guys are showing up for this mass murderer. Like you're so concerned
That's
about
very
him.
good.
I
Man,
think, and so
I
it
really had
goes
closed
towards
my head
motive.
off to that. That's good.
Because you're right. Like without the context, you don't really know. You don't really know. And maybe, by the way, Michael, maybe that's a great argument for the defense. Maybe the defense is like, see, he doesn't even know what's going on. Like he thinks you're trying to arrest him for mass murder, and he only killed one person, allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. I'm trying
yeah.
to bring up here, I hadn't pulled this ahead of time because I did a bad job. I want to get just one of the in-court pictures of him. Let me see if I can pull this up here. And get your take on, what we've seen from these still photos, and the rest is, artwork. Because of course it's New York, so heaven forbid we have, cameras in the courtroom or anything.
I know.
That's just so frustrating, especially
It is.
for this case. When are they going to get their heads out of their judicial arses?
It's such an archaic reason behind it.
Because it's not the law.
Yeah, it's not the law. It's really just, well, we've always done it this way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well,
courts love precedent.
Yeah, you've done it wrong all this time.
Why not continue?
Yeah. Okay, let me see if I can find it. I'm really my tech talents here on the fly.
It's all good.
And
I have a feeling I know which picture you're going to pull.
Well, I don't know. I grabbed the first. I saw so many from the earlier,
Yeah.
arrest and everything. I'm really looking for the one that's more about. Let's see if I can do
like the
this.
in-court ones.
Yeah. And there've only been a few.
My understanding is that the judge allows photographs to be taken in like the first 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, this is kind of like, remember when Trump was on trial, it was similar. They actually did allow a couple of minutes of video as well.
Okay.
But mostly it was just still photos. What a weird little, I guess, compromise that it is, right? Let's see if I can grow this picture. It's a little bit bigger, maybe.
There you go.
Okay, so there he is chatting with one of his attorneys, and he has a female attorney on the other side.
Right.
This is one of the more tame photos, because in some of them he's smiling, and
I know.
I mean, it looks like a
With the
performance. I
fist.
saw him looking right at the camera on one of them. I couldn't find that.
I know.
One.
Yeah.
What you've represented folks that are in the compromised positions like this. What's your take on his behavior?
I mean, honestly, I would advise him not to pose at all. I would just be like, look, and it's interesting because you do wonder what where he's going with that. Is this like a message to his supporters, that like he wants to kind of give back? We do know that he writes back to his supporters from jail. He gets like a zillion letters and he writes back. So
Marriage proposals. Yeah.
yes, a lot of that. So I don't know if this was just his way, I guess, of giving a message to his supporters, like, thank you for the support, whatever. But overall, I don't think it's a good look at all, because he needs to be taking it seriously. It's a solemn proceeding, and it just gives the wrong impression. I mean, a lot of preparing for a trial is preparing your client or preparing witnesses on courtroom behavior. You have to be able to react or not react in a very specific way. In fact, I'm a very reactive person by nature, as you might have noticed. And early in my career as a prosecutor, I was dressed down by a judge once, and I never did it again, because I would be, watching opposing counsel do their thing, and I guess I had it all over my face, where I was like,
Eye rolling, some eye
yeah,
rolling, and
bad. And the judge is like, you're communicating with the jury, you can't do that. And I was like, oh my God, I was so ashamed and embarrassed. But you learn. But people like Luigi, people, who don't do this as a profession, this is their first time, or, first few times in court, they don't know that. They have to be taught. They have to be prepped. They have to be told, like, listen, you might think that this is a good thing. It is not. It is not going to help you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a major client control issue, and it's possible they don't have it.
I know. Or either they don't have it, or they've made the decision not to
let him pander.
Right.
Because of this weird component to his case that you don't see very often, and that is sympathy and empathy for the guy.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if it's conscious, like he's purposely performing, or if he's a little wacky and doesn't really understand the gravity of where he's at and what's going on.
Right. And I think I might have even seen a statement from the defense after, like, the fist picture came out, the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, in fact, that's where he's looking at the camera, and he's
right, and he's like yeah.
He thinks he's Aiden Carney, Turtle Boy.
Yeah. I think that there was like an edited thing written by the journalist to say that, like, this was not posed, and I caught him in the middle of a conversation or something.
Okay.
Like, I think the defense recognized how bad that made him look. But the problem is, in the days after that, he still had some pictures where he was smiling at the camera. Although I don't even know. I mean, I hear that during those 2 minutes, the photographers are like, smile, smile. So I don't know, right? Maybe it's like this instinctual
That's weird
thing.
too.
It's also weird. And you know what? Shame on the photographers. Because you don't want to put him in a bad
That's not appropriate.
spot.
If you're a court photographer,
Totally.
you're not a producer director.
Right.
You're there just
Can
to
you just
capture.
lift your chin a little? Like,
is that your best side?
right. Show us the brows. Like, what?
Oh my!
You're
Can
going
you
to
furrow
get this
your
guy
brows?
convicted. Yeah. So I don't know. The truth of the matter is, I don't know what's going on in there. And it is, I do kind of want to say that, like, we shouldn't judge, I guess, because we don't really know
He's
who's
innocent,
saying what.
still proven guilty.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's whether you think what he did was right, wrong, or didn't do it.
Right.
Yeah, it's got to play out. I get that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
whether
this
he's
is
posing or not.
yes, exactly. This is to be continued. So
Yes.
That's the plan. I'm going to go pop in there, try and pop in tomorrow, and we'll reconvene.
Yeah.
We're going to adjourn for now. We'll reconvene and get into a little more of the detail on this and get your thoughts on how this is going to play out going forward. This is really just the beginning.
I agree. I'm really looking forward to it.
When do you think this will go to trial, assuming that happens?
That's a good question. I mean, technically, after the pretrial suppression hearings, we're obviously going to get a decision by the judge. And unlike most suppression hearings, it doesn't look like we're going to get a decision the day that they finish, right?
Yes, I think I've heard January sometime, whatever that means.
Yeah, right. So probably about like a month away, we'll get the decision. Once we get the decision, then they can start setting the case down for a trial date. There are going to be some preliminary issues to argue before trial, just like housekeeping things. So that usually does take a little bit of time. But I would hope that we're going to get a trial at least sometime in the next year. you know?
Yeah. And I would think some of these losses, if they are losses for the defense, those are going to come back to life as motions in limine. Right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was referring to. Exactly. To at least limit certain things. There's going to be a lot of arguments depending on the decision of this judge.
Yeah. Cool. Are you familiar with Judge Caro? I think it is. That's an.
I'm not,
No?
I actually am not familiar with him.
Okay.
So
All
no
right.
comment on that, I guess.
All right. That's probably best.
Yeah, right. I know. I'm right, because I could end up having cases in front of him. I don't want to piss him
And you'd
off.
be rolling your eyes, and then there you go.
I'll be dressed down again. Michael, you got to tell me what color to paint my wall for tomorrow.
Well, we do like a lot of green here, so
Okay, we'll
you
keep it.
stick with that. Yeah. Thank you so much. Always appreciate it. So fun.
Thanks,
and
Michael.
and a tough case to follow with so many different attitudes and positions on it. I'm glad I've got your brain to pick.
I'm glad to talk about it with you, Michael. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. So Ms. Thompson there, who does all kinds of stuff, criminal defense, et cetera, et cetera. An amazing attorney in the New York area, very familiar with this turf. So we'll get into more of the Luigi Mangione case. So stay with us for part 2 of this discussion. We'll see what happens tomorrow. We got a few things in the mix. I can't disclose what might be, but certainly the Mangione case is going to be part of what we do. So have a great evening. Appreciate you joining. This is Justice Served TV. Thanks. Oh, wait. Linda would be very happy for me to remind you to share and like and comment. And what's the other thing? Oh, subscribe. That's it. In the meantime, try to do the right thing.
On the sky.